Hi, my name is Richard Swatton and I've been an astrologer for over 2/3 of my lifetime. And welcome to this review of the sun signs. My intention, however, is to try and get beneath the signs, within them, look at the structural processes operating, because the signs of the zodiac are more than a list of correspondences or character associations or particular forms of behavior. Those are interesting, and they were noted very well in the 1970s with Linda Goodman's sun signs. How to spot an Aries, how to spot a Leo, how to spot a particular sign. Certain characteristics are indeed entertaining. But what I'm interested in is looking at the root principles of the sign, the ordering processes. The signs really start off by taking the qualities of the seasons, because the zodiac as a whole is actually a tale, a story of an ordering process. And each one of the signs has a specific thing to say in the overall cycle of the year. We could say that the signs are the seasonal moods, and each season passes through 3 stages. There are 4 seasons, and so therefore this is obviously relating to the 12 signs. Each sign has an image, but in that image is condensed a whole variety of things, from mythic associations, ancient wisdom traditions. Each sign has a response mechanism and a type of behavior that goes with it. It's as if it reacts to life in a particular way. And you could also see the signs perhaps as a particular tint or a mode of perception through which people look. And so when they're seeing, they kind of select things from the world through their sun sign because they have an affinity with it. It reflects them in some way. The signs are an embodiment of nature, and so they don't just operate in the human vehicle, they operate everywhere. The signs also have an innate ordering principle, a teleology, an intent or a purpose to them. These are a tale to be told. It's as if there is, as I say, a developing process in each sign that the sun sign in particular will show what this ordering process is. When we become our sun sign, what we become is more connected to our individual purpose. The word purpose is interesting in this regard. It means finding one's own place. Psychologically, it means finding one's identity, one's will to live, and then put that out with intent, radiating from a center of which the sign expresses when the sun is within it. The symbol of the sun is quite obvious, really. It's the central planet. Astrologers call the sun and the moon and all of the other planets, just for convenience. But it's the central ordering principle around which all of the others revolve. The sun in the sign, therefore, gives us an idea about this central ordering principle and the pattern of unfoldment around the rest. So if you can see the zodiac as a kind of cake with lots of candles on it, the sun is the brightest candle, the one that makes most sense. It brings it all together. If we lose touch with our sun sign, our sense of individuality, our sense of purpose, our sense of direction, or the will to live, as Alan Leo called it, he called the sun the life bringer, then we have a sense of chaos, purposeless direction, and a kind of just sinking into the flow of different instincts and feelings and needs, all without a kind of central symbol. The images of the sun are quite a few, from the father to the president, the king of a country, the pharaoh indeed. In fact, the ancient civilizations of Egypt revolved around this center of the sun, the main deity. The sun however, is just the carrier of consciousness, just as the king was thought to be the supreme container of a kind of ordering principle in the state. As Apollo, the sun god, he is the father principle, the breaker of curses, the bringer of civilization, of prophecy, and he brings music. As a kind of champion or a hero, he's a very important character in the Greek pantheon. Helios, though, has a very important principle too to bring into operation here. Helios is just the carrier of the sun. In other words, what he represents is similar to what our psychology is. Our psychology carries consciousness in a particular form, but it isn't actually consciousness itself. So the sun, although it radiates and illumines our life and brings purpose and meaning to it, it isn't consciousness itself. It's just the awareness of our own unique and individual path that is portrayed throughout the sun sign itself, and therefore will lead us to a sense of unique and individual destiny. Capricorn is the 10th sign of the zodiac and is the last of the earth signs. The journey of earth is the journey of embodiment in nature's patterns. You come into a body in Taurus. It is the basic substance of nature. It is the fecund experience that life has something to produce and that you can build upon it. You can build some securities on which to stand. Virgo takes that and refines those qualities into skills, functional uses. It's of service to humanity in the way that it puts things in an order. It contains Taurus, but it's in a more refined fashion. It's as if Taurus is the actual substance of Earth. Virgo is what you do with it. And then by the time we get to the third, the Capricorn, the chief of the earth signs, we get the total control over the earth. We embody it in the form of a structure or a sense of organizing it, which is why for long, in traditional astrology, Capricorn has been called the sign of industry. And it has a sense of a manager running a big industry or a factory somewhere. It is the sign of administrative control, the sign of the president, the sign of the person on top. Its symbol, the goat, has been humorously given and said to me by one of my friend astrologers. GOAT stands for greatest of all time. And you could see that in the sign as some kind of real desire to make it to the top. To make it to a position where one is literally master of the world. This is one of the key themes, actually, of the sign of Capricorn, is exactly how do you do that? You need a mentor, usually. You need a father principle. And inside this strange sign of the goat fish, which is what it is, half of it is a kind of fish, and then the other half is the goat. Is this a sense that there is something transforming going on through it. So this need to get to the top, to be the greatest of all time, to be the master of the world, follows the myth exactly. That in some of these myths, the Capricorn started in the sea. It started in an undifferentiated state, and then when it went on dry land, it formed hooves and legs that it could run. And it ran along the seashore and then started to spring into action. And this idea, the ibex, of springing from place to place, which is what the word capricious means, is to spring or to jump or to leap ahead, usually in an upward direction. So this whole process of coming out of the water, of moving along land, and then seeing a kind of prize goal about where you want to be. So this challenge of climbing is all very important to the sign of Capricorn. And this is, I think, the story of all the earth signs too, but never more prevalent or clear in Capricorn. If these signs are given everything on a plate, if they already have inherited wealth, for example, or they're given a position which they haven't earned, the climbing bit of the whole experience is gone. It's kind of put to one side, and one really hasn't built up any internal muscle. One hasn't earned it. And this whole thing about earning and effort and grit and determination, and to pick yourself up sometimes when you've fallen so many times, is one of the great industrious qualities of this sign that it gives. It teaches this as well, and you find many Capricorns in power, in positions of power or status of some kind. There is an inherent insecurity in the sign too, that when it gets that status, it seems to get it for some form of approval. It needs the status of societal approval in order to feel that it's valuable. There it's in one of its inherent weaknesses, because all heads of all organization eventually end. And then if they haven't built up something psychological from it, which is essentially the building up of an internal sense of self-respect, an internal sense of dignity, by applying yourself to what you've done, to be the best that you can, to be the greatest of all time, and to climb that by finding your own skill set through the products of your own creativity, that you've built some kind of industry or built some kind of business, and that your ambition has soared and climbed up. This is where the Capricorn will be most satisfied, when that has actually happened, when they've finally done it. It's as if Capricorn, though, is kind of like the descent of the spirit. It's just as spiritual as the previous sign, in the sense that it has a high purpose to fulfill. But in the sign of Sagittarius, we ascended. Now, Capricorn ascends, but it always stays on the earth. In other words, in a more esoteric line of thought, Capricorn represents the purpose of life within the body. And this brings us on to various mythological contexts and mythological associations to do with not only the goat, with its representation of evil in certain forms, the evil of the earth, but the goat fish, Ea, and also to do with the pattern stemming from the crucifixion of consciousness, I would put it like that. The bondage of the material realm with the spiritual realm, and how that works, and how you get through that is the pattern stemming from that, which is depicted in these myths. I wanted to talk briefly, before we go into some of the mythology, or at least point towards it, about the pattern in the sign of the Son and the Father. This could otherwise be seen as the pattern of the apprentice and the master. Now, there are some Capricorns that have this vision of becoming great, of building something important, building in a form of self-respect, but they haven't found that capacity to mentor themselves. Sometimes there's been a difficulty with the father image or authority in the early home, just as Aries did, although it's for a different reason. You see, because Capricorn is that sign which wants to set up an institution and preserve it. That's why it's called the sign of architecture. It's the sign of the glorious mountains that are there for all time. It wants to build some kind of structure which would be permanent. Hitler had Moon conjunction Jupiter in this sign. He had a vitalistic force in him which wanted to build something for all time. Jupiter being that presence which wants to make itself known fully. And his Sun was in Taurus, providing a kind of strong sense of himself to do this, to build something, the Reich for 1,000 years. Capricorn has this necessity to build something powerful, to be strong. But as I say, when we come down to the internal dynamics, sometimes somewhere in Capricorn's life is a weak child, or a child needing to be fathered or mentored. This also theme comes in Christ's birthday, and which happens over the winter solstice. You see, as a part of nature, this time of year, you would think, because the sun is at its lowest declination below the equator, you would think that this suggests symbolically that life, or life energy, is at its weakest. Well, certainly the sun's energy is at its weakest, but where has it gone? It's at this time that everybody is forced to fight hardest. It's at this time, when there are the barren wastes of winter, the cold, the difficulties to get over, that somehow the spirit wants to battle on through it. The grit, the determination in the sign, the perseverance, the fortitude, all of these qualities coming forth. And that's where the necessity of having a good father, of instilling values, of self-discipline, of making efforts, of finding energies that you didn't have to carry on through the difficulty of incarnate existence. And why I've called it the sign of the crucifixion of consciousness is not to take away from the mystery of the crucifixion itself, but it has to do with coming to terms with the bondage of the spirit in the material form, the cross being the four elements. In a mystical sense, or an esoteric sense, this is the burden of carrying a sense of high purpose or achievement, but within the limited confines of a body. That leads to great effort, it leads to great pain, because the material world is corrupt, it's full of difficulties, it doesn't always go the way that you want it to. And Capricorn often have a series of developments, rather like Taurus and Leo. They have a series of developments where they build something up and it hasn't quite had the strength to stay there. Or they've built up a business, or they've built up a status or an identity, and at midlife they find that it doesn't hold water, it's not quite true to itself. So a Capricorn that has kind of identified itself with power and authority and ability, or it can be the sign of the teacher or the guide or the instructor. If the personality is just hiding behind that, pretending it to be more powerful than it is, then that structure actually collapses later on in life. Because what happens is, the nature of the teacher-pupil relationship, or the apprentice, is eventually the acceptance of the toil and the struggle that it's going to take to get where you want to go. And if you don't know how to do it, then one goes to business school, and then one tries and makes one's mistakes. This is the quality of Capricorn, the realism of experience, to say, well, sometimes life's tough and you just have to get on with it. One of the, I think, most clear examples of this is with Richard Nixon, the 37th President of the United States of America. He was a Capricorn, and his journey from poverty to great difficulty, from that early home life where his father was rather strict and authoritarian, and some would say even cruel in certain biographies, certainly not autobiographies. They say that the father was cruel and ruthless. But Nixon himself believed that his father was simply telling him a truth. Life's tough, get on with it, be a man, don't give in, don't give up. It was unfortunate that some of Nixon's inner life, his personality, had certain flaws in it which he tended to cover up and try and pretend weren't there. He was actually quite an insecure person in meeting people face to face, but he had great ambition, great drive, and never gave up. The 9th of August 1974 was a dismal day for this man, when he was the first president ever to resign office. A fall from high grace, a powerful blow to dignity. And then he suffered those problems that Capricorn feel when they have had to take a step down. The problems of humiliation, of shame, of defeat. But I was always taken by what Nixon had to say about defeat, even if it's defeat in disgrace, even if you have been defeated for a good reason and brought down, is that he said you never fail unless you get up. Now in his school days he was never a great football player, but he was always there, always acting as some kind of tackling dummy, not a great person in terms of sporting achievement, but he turned up every week, supporting the team, taking the knocks, being prepared to help the team out when it was necessary, always in reserve, never up front, but never complaining. I think this is why it's a fascinating sign, because it is a tendency to try and overcome weakness, but sometimes it can be brought down by its unwillingness to look at its own weakness and its insecurities once some status has been built up. So let's cover one at a time some of Capricorn's gifts. First of all, we have this idea that it wants to attain authority. A true inner authority, however, can only be gained through effort, inspiration and strength and determination, a kind of will to achieve and a desire to get to the top. But that can lead, unfortunately, to one of its worst vices, the feeling of being superior to or above everyone. Once you've attained something, you tend to put other people, and there can be a subtle sense of contempt or belittlement for those people that haven't made it. Or even if Capricorn hasn't made it themselves, they can somehow move into a sense of subtle superiority, that they didn't make it for this reason or they didn't make it for that reason. They give themselves excuses for not continuing on. The other gift is solidity of purpose. An intent, as I say, in the ambitious drive to get to the top and to seek status. But sometimes this can become domineering or overbearing. And this is something I think that it needs to be seen when they come into the role of guide. Sometimes that masterfulness that they've achieved it provides a sense of inspiration, but it mustn't forget the sensitivities of the individual as well, which you see in the opposite sign of Cancer. Both of these, actually, Cancer and Capricorn, are parental. The softer side comes from the Cancer, the insecurities, and providing a platform through which those insecurities of feeling can be weathered. If you press too hard as an over-domineering Capricorn, it can put people off, and so therefore that person won't be proudful of the masculine authority, or even the feminine authority, the mother authority. It will just become resentful. So one must be careful not to be over-domineering in one's attempt to guide, teach and instruct. The other flaw in the sign is sometimes they can get on their high horse. Perhaps I should have said that for the sign of Sagittarius. But this is what brought President Nixon down. The flaw in his character, the sense that because you have your eye on a certain purpose, a certain greatness, that the end justifies the means. And I believe that Nixon felt that for whatever means it took, when you have to get up that greasy pole of politics and deceive your way through, or however you do it, that sometimes the end does justify the means, because then you can get on and do what you did. He did some great things in office. And we see this, by the way, subtly shown, or perhaps unsubtly shown, in the recent House of Cards, which is still an ongoing episodic series. So You can deceive oneself into denying your personal faults, Capricorn can, but that can lead to paranoia of a way that people are bringing you down. Capricorn needs to find this balance between the water in them, the softness. They need to know where they've come from, because there's an alchemical principle involved here, an esoteric principle involved in this sign. It's a very complex sign indeed to understand, the water versus the earth. But it's that process of alchemy, from making something out of nothing, from the pressures of the emotional environment, and then to bring that into a constructive form and not give up. So in conclusion, I think the main purpose of Capricorn is to help people, instruct people, guide people into bringing their ideas into a full manifestation. And on the internal world, on the way to that form of achievement, is to build up a sense of inner determination through the struggle and effort. The other thing I think that Capricorn gives to us, the lesson, if you like, the life lesson, is nothing is too great. That might be an overstatement, but it isn't a bad sense that you can walk around and say, nothing is too great for me to achieve. Why can't I do this? It may take you many years, and very often Capricorn come to their success in life, have mastery over the world later. When, you see, because often what happens is there's a kind of false authority or power built up, which is then destroyed through midlife. The midlife crisis confronts you with the sincerity or the truth of your own inner being. But for Capricorn, nothing is too great. So when Nixon was in his last speech on that resignation day, an image has always stayed in my mind, which he spoke about. And in a moment of reflection and self-reflection, almost forward honesty, which sometimes Capricorn don't have. They're too busy being important or significant. He said this: "It's only when you've been in the deepest valley will you ever know what it's like to be on the highest mountain." And here I believe he was talking about himself, about where he had been, what he'd achieved. But of course, signifying that this sense of despair, having been brought down really by his own faults, that battle was just beginning. But what did he do after that? Yes, he nearly died. He went into hospital and nearly died. But over the next 20 years, he fought back to become a significant figure in politics again, trying to regain his reputation, reading, writing, speaking, trying to overcome the humiliation that had been shown him in this resignation. I think in many ways he's an inspirational figure, and one worth viewing when we look at the sign of Capricorn at its greatest, but also at its worst.